They don't walk alone because they're broken. They walk alone because they've outgrown chaos. Sigma empaths are the rare ones who can stand in silence and still feel everything. They move through the world like observers, calm, unreadable, but deeply aware. People often mistake their distance for loneliness, not realizing it's their greatest strength, because when a Sigma empath walks alone, they're not avoiding people, they're mastering themselves. Every step in solitude sharpens their intuition, strengthens their boundaries, and deepens their emotional intelligence. They've learned that being alone isn't isolation, it's calibration. It's how they reset their energy after carrying the emotions of everyone else. If you've ever felt too sensitive for this world, yet too strong to quit, this video is for you. Because sometimes walking alone is not a weakness, it's your initiation into power. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Brainy Empath and join thousands of minds who feel deeply but think strategically. Now, tell me in the comments, do you find peace in solitude or in connection? They walk alone not out of sadness, but out of emotional clarity. A Sigma empath doesn't isolate themselves because they're broken. They step away because they finally see things for what they truly are. Their solitude isn't an escape, it's an awakening. After years of giving too much, feeling too deeply, and absorbing everyone's chaos, they reach a quiet realization. Not everyone deserves access to their energy. So they start walking alone, not in bitterness, but in balance. When a Sigma empath walks away from noise, something profound happens. The confusion fades, the constant emotional static from others, the manipulation, the drama, the guilt, all dissolves into silence. And in that silence, they find themselves again. They start hearing their own thoughts clearly for the first time in years. Their heart, once heavy from carrying everyone else's pain, begins to feel light again. It's not loneliness, it's freedom disguised as solitude. Most people mistake this withdrawal for sadness, but the Sigma empath isn't running from connection. They're returning to authenticity. They've learned that peace often requires distance, and that protecting their sensitivity doesn't make them cold. It makes them wise. Every moment spent alone becomes a recalibration of their inner world. They journal, they reflect, they rebuild. They no longer chase validation or cling to people who misunderstand them. Instead, they choose presence, their own presence. In this phase, their energy changes. They move slower, speak less, but everything they do carries intention. Their boundaries become sacred. They stop trying to prove their goodness and start embodying it quietly. Their detachment isn't emptiness, it's awareness. Because the more emotionally clear they become, the less tolerance they have for inconsistency, lies, or half-hearted love. What others see as distance is actually the Sigma empath's highest form of healing, emotional minimalism. They keep only what aligns, release what drains, and guard their peace like it's oxygen. That's why walking alone isn't their weakness, it's their evolution. The world might never understand how someone can be both kind and distant at the same time, but that's the paradox of a Sigma empath. They walk alone not because they've lost faith in others, but because they've finally found faith in themselves. Solitude becomes their sanctuary for healing and self-discovery. For the Sigma empath, being alone isn't a punishment, it's sacred space. It's where the noise of the world fades and their true voice finally emerges. They've spent so much of their life feeling everyone else's emotions that solitude becomes the only place where they can tell what's truly theirs. In that silence, they begin to rebuild, piece by piece, truth by truth. It's not isolation, it's restoration. When they withdraw from people, it's not because they stopped caring, it's because they care too much and they've learned the hard way that constant connection can blur their boundaries. Solitude becomes the medicine for their overstimulated empathy. They sit with themselves, not out of loneliness, but out of reverence. They meditate, they reflect, they revisit old wounds without judgment, and in that quiet reflection, something powerful happens. Healing begins to take form. The Sigma empath learns that peace doesn't come from fixing others, but from understanding themselves. They start to see patterns, why they tolerated certain energies, why they kept forgiving people who never changed, why they always put others before their own emotional well-being. In solitude, they see the cost of their selflessness and the value of their boundaries. That's where transformation begins. Over time, the silence that once felt heavy turns into a safe haven. They no longer crave constant validation or external comfort. They learn to sit in their own energy and find it enough. That's the Sigma empath's quiet power, the ability to heal without needing to be seen. They don't announce their growth, they live it. They don't seek closure from others, they give it to themselves. And as they grow more comfortable in solitude, something shifts. They start creating, not consuming. They start listening to their intuition instead of other people's noise. They realize that solitude was never emptiness. It was space for their soul to breathe again. To outsiders, their distance looks mysterious, even intimidating, but to the Sigma empath, it's home, the place where they return to remember who they are. Because in solitude, they don't just find peace, they find power. And once they discover that, they never trade it for noise again. Their intuition sharpens in silence. They sense truth without noise. When the Sigma empath steps into silence, something awakens within them. Their mind quiets, but their perception expands. The absence of words, distractions, and opinions creates space for a deeper awareness, one that listens beneath the surface of reality. Their intuition, once clouded by emotional chaos, becomes razor sharp. They start sensing truth long before it's spoken, reading energy as effortlessly as others read words. This heightened awareness isn't mystical, it's mastery. The Sigma empath's sensitivity, once overwhelming, becomes their compass. In silence, they notice subtle shifts, a pause before a lie, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, an energy that feels off even when the words sound right. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition, born from deep emotional intelligence. They've learned that truth doesn't hide in what people say, it hides in how it feels. Every moment spent alone sharpens this inner radar. Without noise, they start seeing the world in layers, motives, emotions, authenticity, deceit. They no longer need confirmation or explanation. Their body knows. Their empathy, fused with logic, turns into insight that few can comprehend. That's why Sigma empaths are so difficult to deceive. Their intuition doesn't guess, it recognizes. Most people underestimate this ability. They think silence means disconnection, but for the Sigma empath, silence is the ultimate connection to themselves, to energy, to truth. They don't chase answers, they receive them. They don't confront deception, they simply withdraw from it, because once their intuition speaks, they listen. What makes this gift so powerful is its precision. The Sigma empath doesn't expose lies to prove they're right. They just act accordingly. Their silence becomes their strategy, their awareness, their shield. And while others are lost in overthinking, they already know what needs to be done, calmly, quietly, decisively. In a noisy world full of masks and performances, their stillness cuts through illusion like a blade. People can't hide around them, not because they see everything, but because they feel everything. That's the essence of their power, the ability to sense truth without evidence, to recognize energy without words. And once you reach that level of awareness, silence is no longer emptiness. It's intelligence in its purest form. They detach from draining energy to protect their emotional balance. A Sigma empath doesn't cut people off because they've stopped caring. They do it because they've finally learned the cost of carrying what isn't theirs. Emotional balance isn't something they take lightly, it's survival. For years, they've absorbed the moods, pain, and chaos of others until their own peace became collateral damage. So when they start detaching, it's not rejection, it's realignment. They begin to notice the difference between connection and consumption. Some people don't just share energy, they feed on it. Every conversation feels heavy, every interaction leaves an invisible weight behind. The Sigma empath, once eager to heal, begins to sense that imbalance instantly. And instead of over-explaining or rescuing, they quietly pull away. It's not coldness, it's clarity. They finally understand that protecting their peace means not participating in other people's storms. This emotional detachment isn't dramatic, it happens in silence, no arguments, no guilt trips, no warnings, just an energetic withdrawal that feels almost invisible. They start answering less, engaging less, caring less, not out of bitterness, but because they know too much emotional noise weakens their intuition. The less energy they waste trying to fix others, the more they can focus on keeping themselves whole. To outsiders, this new calm can seem distant, even ruthless, but to the Sigma empath, it's sacred discipline. They've realized that empathy without boundaries leads to burnout, and that emotional detachment doesn't make them unkind, it makes them wise. They now reserve their compassion for those who respect it, their attention for those who value it, and their time for what truly nourishes their soul. Once they detach from draining energy, something shifts. Their aura changes, lighter, stronger, untouchable. The people who once depended on their kindness for comfort feel the absence like a vacuum because the Sigma empath's presence was never ordinary, it was healing. But healing isn't their job anymore, it's their lifestyle. And that means keeping their energy clean, focused, and protected. Emotional detachment for them is in a wall. It's balance in motion. It's how they stay kind without being consumed, giving without being emptied, and connected without being controlled. Because the truth is, the more they protect their energy, the more powerful their empathy becomes. They attract peace, not people, because their energy feels self-sufficient. The Sigma empath's presence carries a calm that doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. They don't chase connection, validation, or belonging. They've already found it within themselves. Their energy feels grounded, centered, and whole, the kind that doesn't need fixing, explaining, or proving. And that self-sufficiency is magnetic. It pulls in peace the way noise pulls in chaos. People can feel it before they even understand it. There's something different about someone who doesn't need anything from you. No approval, no reaction, no validation. The Sigma empath gives off an aura of quiet confidence, of inner balance that's both comforting and intimidating. They attract not by pursuit, but by presence. Because peace, real peace, can't be faked, and those who've lived through emotional storms recognize it instantly. Their self-sufficiency wasn't born from arrogance, it was shaped through survival. They've been the fixer, the healer, the listener who carried everyone else's pain until they learned that giving endlessly leads to emptiness. So they turned inward, rebuilt their emotional foundation, and discovered that fulfillment doesn't come from others, it comes from alignment. Once they reached that place, their entire vibration shifted. The Sigma empath's energy no longer calls out for a rescue or recognition. It radiates balance, and that's why peace finds them naturally. They attract moments, not drama, depth, not noise, quality, not quantity. People who enter their orbit either rise to match their frequency or fade away. It's not personal, it's energetic law. To those around them, their calm feels mysterious. How can someone be so still, yet so strong? How can they be detached yet so deeply compassionate? It's because they've mastered the paradox. They love without clinging, they care without absorbing, and they connect without losing themselves. The Sigma empath doesn't need constant company to feel alive. They've made peace their companion, and that's what makes them magnetic in a world addicted to chaos. People come to them not because they're loud, but because they're still. Not because they demand attention, but because their presence feels like exhale after a storm. They attract peace because they've become it. And once you become peace, the world can't help but be drawn to your silence. A silence. Their independence confuses manipulators who rely on dependency. Manipulators thrive on control. They survive by creating emotional dependency, by making people feel like they need them. But the Sigma empath, they're the exception. Their independence is quiet but absolute, and it leaves manipulators powerless. You can't control someone who isn't afraid to walk away. You can't trap someone who finds peace in solitude. That's what makes the Sigma empath so dangerous to those who prey on vulnerability. Their strength hides in their freedom. They've been through the cycle before, the subtle guilt trips, the silent expectations, the emotional games disguised as love or loyalty. But each experience became a lesson. Every betrayal, every disappointment taught them that attachment without awareness leads to suffering. So they learned the art of detachment. Now, when someone tries to pull their strings, they don't react, they observe. When someone tries to make them feel guilty, they stay calm. When manipulation demands an emotional response, they give none. This independence isn't coldness, it's mastery. It's the result of choosing peace over people-pleasing and clarity over chaos. The Sigma empath no longer fears being alone because solitude is where they regained their strength. They no longer crave external validation because their worth no longer depends on attention. This self-sufficiency disrupts manipulators at their core. They can't mirror, provoke, or control what's already whole. Hands ready, mirror pro, mirror location quote unquote, control Abe, itself of what is already whole. To a manipulator, the Sigma empath's silence feels like a wall they can't climb. Their distance feels like rejection, when in truth, it's discernment. They see the games unfolding before they even begin. The exaggerated affection, the pity tactics, the attempts to trigger emotional guilt. Instead of reacting, they smile internally. Because when you've learned to be whole on your own, no one can use your heart against you. People who rely on dependency find this independence terrifying. They mistake calm for coldness, peace for pride, distance for arrogance, but that's only because they've never experienced real emotional strength. The Sigma empath doesn't cut people off out of ego, they simply refuse to play roles in stories that drain them. That's the quiet irony. The freer they become, the harder they are to manipulate, because emotional independence doesn't just protect them, it confuses those who've built their power on control. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't need you, and that realization ends the game before it even begins. Walking alone teaches them emotional strength without bitterness. For the Sigma empath, solitude isn't a wound, it's a teacher. When they walk alone, they learn lessons that no relationship, no group, and no approval could ever teach them. They learn that peace doesn't depend on people, that healing doesn't require an audience, and most importantly, that strength doesn't have to come from anger. Their journey through solitude shapes them into something rare, strong, but soft, detached, but not cold. They become proof that you can grow through pain without becoming hardened by it. In the beginning, walking alone hurts. The silence feels heavy, the absence of familiar voices echoes louder than expected. But with time, the Sigma empath starts to understand that loneliness is only uncomfortable until it becomes understood. Every quiet night, every solo decision, every moment of doubt, it all trains them to rely on themselves. They start to see their own resilience, their own ability to self-soothe, their own emotional intelligence, unfolding like armor made of grace. And here's the difference. They don't grow bitter, they grow clear. Instead of hating those who hurt them, they start to thank them in silence because those experiences built the very peace others now envy. Instead of closing their heart, they simply upgrade its boundaries. Their forgiveness becomes selective, their compassion becomes guided, and their strength becomes serene. When they walk alone long enough, they stop craving rescue. They no longer chase validation or explanations. They realize that walking alone isn't about rejecting others, it's about reconnecting with themselves. They find beauty in their independence, pride in their solitude, and peace in their stillness. The storms that once shattered them now teach rhythm and patience. The silence that once frightened them now heals. What emerges from that solitude is a Sigma empath transformed, unshakable, centered, and free from resentment. They've mastered the art of standing alone without feeling lonely. Because emotional strength isn't about being unbothered, it's about being deeply aware and still choosing peace. That's why when a Sigma empath walks alone, they don't carry anger in their steps, they carry wisdom. Their silence holds peace. Their eyes hold understanding, and their heart, though scarred, remains open, but only to those who vibrate on the same calm frequency they fought so hard to find. In solitude, they become unshakable, compassionate, but untouchable. There comes a moment when the Sigma empath stops being shaped by the world and starts shaping it instead. Solitude, once a refuge, becomes their fortress, a place where emotions refine into wisdom and empathy evolves into power. They still feel deeply, still care genuinely, but the difference now is control. Their compassion is no longer a doorway for others to enter freely. It's a guarded temple where only truth is allowed. That's the balance they find in silence. A heart that remains open, but boundaries that are unbreakable. When they're alone, they stop being reactive and start becoming reflective. They no longer absorb energy. They read it, analyze it, and decide consciously whether it deserves access. Their empathy turns into discernment. Their silence becomes strategy. The same emotions that once made them vulnerable now make them visionary. They can feel someone's intention without being influenced by it. That's what makes them unshakable, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. People sense the shift, but can't explain it. The Sigma empath who once gave endlessly now radiates peace without effort. There's a calm confidence in their energy that says, I've seen too much to be shaken. They can stand in chaos and still be centered, surrounded by manipulation, yet untouched by it. They've learned that strength isn't about building walls, it's about building awareness so deep that nothing external can disturb their inner stillness. Their compassion remains, but it's precise, directed, intentional, and self-respecting. They don't help everyone anymore, they help wisely. They don't chase connections, they allow alignment. Every boundary they hold is infused with peace, not punishment. They understand now that being untouchable doesn't mean being emotionally fluent enough to choose peace over participation. In solitude, they evolve into something few can understand, someone who feels everything yet remains unmoved. They've transcended the need for validation, explanation, or revenge. Their silence now carries authority, their stillness radiates strength, and their presence commands respect. They walk through life softly but powerfully, compassionate enough to love, detached enough to let go, and wise enough to know the difference. That's the paradox of the Sigma empath. Gentle energy, unshakable soul. They've learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. The Sigma empath doesn't isolate to escape the world, they step back to master it. Their calm no longer hides pain. It radiates control. And those who once underestimated their silence now feel its weight. Because when a Sigma empath walks alone, they walk in peace no one can touch, with clarity no one can shake. You've probably felt that transformation yourself, when detachment stopped being sadness and started feeling like power. When you realized you don't need to prove your worth to anyone, that's when you became untouchable. If this message resonates with you, if you felt misunderstood yet stronger in your silence, you're not alone. You're part of the Sigma Empath tribe. Subscribe to Brainy Empath for more insights that speak your language, the language of quiet strength, emotional intelligence, and calm power. Comment, I walk alone, but never empty, if you've reached that point where peace means more than attention.